Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today we are ranking all 14 starting quarterbacks in the Big Ten. It's going to be spicy for sure, to say the least, and there's some really interesting ones this year with a lot of new faces starting in the Big Ten, a whole new landscape for the conference. So we're going to be going through all of them today, one by one. It's going to be fun. Caleb, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. Every day is a day closer to college football. I can see just on my feeds and recommended just more and more football things being recommended to me because I'm just consuming more and more. I cannot wait. And I'm excited to break down some of these quarterbacks. And there's some new faces, some staple mainstays of the Big Ten. I can't wait to talk about them.
Yeah, so with that said, we're going to be going from 14 all the way up to 1, working our way
being the best?
Up. Oh, of course. I mean, in our hearts.
Yes.
And so with that said, we're starting off at number 14. There was this controversial, to say the least. There was a lot of potential, candidates. And
for the worst?
For the worst. But we had to settle with one, and I'm sorry.
Spencer Petras.
Oh, Spencer, he's returned. If only. But
Dang
it is at 14.
No.
It is Gavin
Starting
Wimsatt
quarterbacks, right? Oh, yeah.
from Rutgers. Yeah. So Gavin Wimsatt from Rutgers is at 14. He had a tough year last year, and there was a few other guys that we're considering here, but we've seen so far what he is, and it is possible that there is a quarterback battle in Rutgers right now, so it is possible he doesn't necessarily win the job, but it seems like it's leaning that way. But last year it was a really tough go for him, and it doesn't seem like much is going to change. I mean, he was ranked 137th last year on PFF in grade, and I mean,
looking like our O-line.
Yeah, it was tough out there. And I mean, he was even dead last in adjusted completion percentage on PFF, 56.8%. And 27th worst in turnover play rate last year at 4.6%. So statistically, it was a bad year. And on the field, you saw that. He was a risk taker. He tried to heave that ball all over the place.
He did.
And, respect the confidence, but it wasn't going to work out.
Not good at all. He was pressured 57th most often, though. So, you got to feel a little bit bad for him.
Well, 138th rated when pressured. So, not ideal for old Gavin Wimsatt. And I think that's all we got to say.
That's a bad combo.
I think that's all we got to say for number 14. So, who you got at number 13?
We have one of the two quarterbacks. As Josh mentioned, there's going to be some quarterback battles throughout the Big Ten, obviously. That's
leading to week 1.
The name of the game. This early in the season, we don't have all the information. And for all we know, a lot of these quarterbacks, both in the battle, will see some playing field, some time this year. But I think number 13, we got Taven Jackson and Brendan Sorsby from Indiana.
Right. But I mean, it looks like it's going to be Taven Jackson getting the start at this point. Basically coming back to Indiana from Tennessee as a transfer. And so overall, I mean, I think we haven't seen much from him, but that's probably better than Gavin Wimsatt right now. And that's kind of all we got. I mean, that's basically all we got at this point.
Gavin Wimsatt's not transferring to Tennessee.
No, exactly. So, I mean, he's basically, I think he played he completed a few passes in one game
games
last year. And so, he also played in the spring game. So we'll see what happens with that Indiana quarterback situation. But they're probably not going to be the best. And so that's kind of where we're at with Indiana right now.
Yeah, agreed. They're both young. So one's a redshirt freshman and one's a true freshman. So that's why there's a little bit more of a battle. But yeah.
It's tough to rank guys when you don't have much information about them.
Exactly.
And that's kind of where we're at right now with the Indiana situation. So not ideal, to say the least.
We move on to yet another QB battle at number 12. But we're pretty sure it's going to be Luke Altmaier for Illinois.
Yeah, almost
coming
definitely.
in at number 12. At 22, he had 56 snaps and he had a 48.9 rating. Not great. He was transferred from Ole Miss, though. So, got some SEC star power. Again, just not a ton on these guys. Not a lot of snaps. So, off the tape, not looking amazing.
Altmaier also started the spring game. So, it's looking fairly locked and loaded that he's going to get that week 1 start. You never know what you're going to get with Bielema here in Illinois. And obviously, one thing you do know is the defense is going to be great. But at quarterback, for them to take the next level, they're going to need to find that solidified starter. And so, I'm not convinced it's going to be Altmaier in the long term, but he seems like he's probably their best option right now, which is why it's a tough situation considering how good their defense is probably going to be this season. It's a really interesting situation for Illinois, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out. So at number 11, another quarterback battle here too, and it's looking like it's a three-way tie here between Noah Kim, Caden Hauser, and Sam Leavitt at Michigan State. And right now, if I had to put my bet on a player, I'd probably put it on Noah Kim. He has the experience. He's actually taken snaps at MSU. And Tucker said they're more than likely not going to announce it, or at least it seemed like from how he talked that they weren't going to announce it up until the start of week 1. So
classic.
This is going to be a tough game. But yeah, I mean, Kim had 38 snaps last season, completed 14 of 19 attempts for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns, no picks. So statistically respectable, but we didn't see enough on the field to really, make any statement here. But I do like the prospects that Noah Kim brings as a junior, I think, as well. So he has a little bit more of that experience there. So I think Noah Kim at least has potential, which is why we're rating him ahead of Altmaier and Jackson and Wimsatt. So now I think we're getting to the quarterbacks that actually have some potential here inside the top 10.
Again, shout out our 5 fans of this special university, Minnesota with Athen Kaliakmanis, a name that I hated hearing last year as he absolutely pieced Nebraska.
Right. I mean, Tanner Morgan got hurt. Kaliakmanis came in and torched us.
Dude, yeah, because Tanner Morgan was doing absolutely nothing. This game was in the bag for Nebraska. And Kaliakmanis just started yeeting the ball down the field. And as a Nebraska fan, none too pleased. So we'll see him at number 10. He was 65th for PFF rating with a 74.9. He only had 131 dropbacks. He took 374 total snaps and was pretty solid running too, as we definitely saw during that Nebraska game as well. And then, him and Morgan went back and forth throughout the rest of the season, which is saying something, and Morgan had been there for 27 years and to be able to kind of snag some playing time.
Tanner Morgan had played well up until that point, till the Nebraska game. So, I mean, yeah, exactly. I think it shows to Kaliakmanis' potential as a player. Last year, his struggle was downfield throwing. I mean, he was 144th ranked of passes of 20 plus yards, which is third to last in all of college football. Yeah, 20% completion percentage of those passes. So that's where you're looking for improvement for Kaliakmanis, but obviously he has the dual threat mobility there and potential with growing as a starter, considering it was just his first few starts. So overall, I do like the potential that he brings. And, obviously, what Minnesota's going to want to do. They want to run the ball, keep the ball on the ground, and let their defense win them games. And that's probably the formula for this year again for Minnesota. So at number 9, another pretty interesting player here with all the transition going on at Purdue here. Jeff Brom out and a lot of transition here. Hudson Card transfers in from Texas to be Purdue's starting quarterback.
Yeah, his claim to fame last year was the really close game when Quinn Ewers goes out and he plays a really solid game and, drives down the field to get a go-ahead field goal with a minute and change on the clock against Alabama in the close loss. Again, to go up with a minute left and then lose by 1 point on a field goal with Alabama driving the field the other way. So again, he's definitely shown some stuff. Has some legs, has some ability, and whenever you can play a solid enough game against Alabama to win the game, it's interesting. He's semi-mobile, but there's red flags too. It's not just all green lights for Hudson Card. He did complete 108 passes, which is 69.4% for 928 yards with 6 touchdowns and 1 interception, which is a good ratio in the 12 games played with the 3 starts. And he also rushed 17 times for 46 yards. And really, a lot of those were just on a couple of those runs. Again, he can kind of get out of the pocket, though.
Yeah, he does. I mean, the big issue for him was the downfield throwing again. That's where you saw the issues. And even in that Alabama game, he took some shots where you're like, oh goodness. Like, yo, calm down, man. You're playing Bama. Like, you can't make that throw in this game. I think he was ranked 15th worst in downfield throwing. 36% completion percentage overall and rated on a 57.7 PFF grades on those throws. So not ideal for him. But again, he showed the potential there and the dual mobility, pretty overall accurate, especially in the intermediate and short ranges. He has a pretty quick decision making and very comfortable in the pocket. He was willing to stay in the pocket and make those throws against Alabama. And so you see the potential there and took some hits. So you see the potential that Purdue has to work with. But it seems more like a developmental thing where it's going to take a year or two for him to get really comfortable and for that Purdue team to really find their identity again. So that's, I think, where the potential issues come into play. It's an interesting player for sure. So at number 8 now, I mean, this one is also
spicy.
A good fit, let's say. And a huge improvement over what they had before. Iowa.
What?
Cade McNamara coming in at number 8.
Yeah, again, I think this is an important point to point out too. We're ranking quarterbacks based on skill, not the position in which they are in. So, you know, if Cade McNamara, again, on these different teams as compared to where he is, again, it's about just straight talent versus the team as a total. This isn't a Big Ten power ranking. This is just their quarterbacks and their skill set.
Right.
So,
I mean, I can see an argument where you could say, well, if Hudson Card and Cade McNamara swapped, I mean, you could see an argument where Hudson Card could be a better fit for Iowa, but I think, or maybe higher upside player. But at the same time, I think Cade McNamara is the game manager that Iowa needs, and it fits well for them. And so,
system
fit, he's going to play well this year. And I think overall, like, that's where you're looking for is like the talent and the fit makes so much sense for McNamara, even though, he wasn't the right fit for Michigan when he had a much better quarterback, to replace him. So, I mean, in 2021, he was a starter for Michigan, transferred to Iowa. I mean, he played like 132 snaps in 2020 for Michigan, 800 snaps in 2021, and then basically just the first game in 2022 for JJ McCarthy came in. So, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on McNamara and like what he could bring to Iowa?
I mean, I think he's a reincarnation of CJ Beathard.
Okay.
Which is exciting. Pretty solid accuracy. Again, not the crazy downfield throwing, but again, just the game manager that Iowa needs. I think as Iowa, they're very excited again, especially with, Petrus is what we've seen the year before. Again, just not it. I think it's definitely an upgrade, but when you compare his arm talent and again, the rest of his game in comparison to some of these other teams, I definitely think he is bottom half of the Big Ten, but again, still a very respectable quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. So on to number 7. This is another wild situation, obviously, with what Northwestern has been going through, but they brought in Ben Bryant from Cincinnati, and it looks like more than likely he will be the starter for Northwestern. So Ben Bryant was he kind of like a backup type of player for Cincinnati up until 2021, where he transferred to Eastern Michigan, where he played fairly well for Eastern Michigan. And really balled out, and then transferred back to Cincinnati in 2022 after Desmond Ridder left. So, and then last year he played really, really well, but then Luke Fickell leaves, of course. And then Emory Jones comes in from ASU. And so he decides to leave and finds himself at Northwestern. So what are your thoughts on what Ben Bryant can bring to the Wildcats?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is veteran leadership, which is exciting for Northwestern. I mean, he had a 9-2 record. He had 10 games with a passing touchdown, 8 with 200 plus yards, and just one game that had more than one interception. So that's, again, a ton of really great things for Northwestern and a really surprising get. Not something that I saw in the transfer portal, but again, with this new world of what it is, I mean, Northwestern got a great quarterback as a grad transfer, again, which is very surprising. You don't see Northwestern. I didn't know that they could make plays in the portal like this. And I mean, again, a great resume on, working with Fickell for multiple years, again, believing in himself to go to a different team, get to start, and then come back to Cincinnati and then get to start the next year. I mean, he's a very solid quarterback. Like
last year was pretty interesting. Like Northwestern and Cincinnati had a similar opponent. They both played Miami, Ohio. And in that game, I mean, Ben Bryant played fantastic. He had 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Where like as Ryan Helinski for Northwestern, 257 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick against the same team. And so I think there is something there. Obviously, Cincinnati was just a better team last year, of course.
100%.
But in the same time, when you watch back the tape, I mean, Bryant looked good, and he has potential to be the best quarterback that Northwestern has had in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of question the weapons and everything else. But yeah, right. I mean, again, a huge upgrade from Helinski. So yeah, they got to be excited.
Exactly. So at number 6, we have the GOAT. No, none other than Jeff Sims, Nebraska, of course. This is an interesting debate. Obviously, he's been one of the hotter topic quarterbacks for the Big Ten about where people have been ranking him and how he stacks against the rest of the competition. Some have had him as high as like 3 or 4 in some rankings. Some have him as low as like 9 or 10 in others. So
yes,
what's your expectation for Jeff Sims? What's realistic? What's the highest outcome situation here? And where do you see him slotting in here in the Big Ten rankings?
I mean, I think he's going to be a very dynamic player. We saw in the spring game that he has an awesome arm talent, can put the ball in the right spot with a lot of zip. You know, we also know that he can make plays on the run, a dual threat quarterback, which is, again, a switch up from what we had in Casey this last year. I think the worry for us with Jeff Sims is that under pressure, he's the 135th ranked when under pressure, a 29 rating with a 28.7 passer rating. And we know our offensive line, and it's not a pretty spot to be in right now. And so that worries us on his upside potential. Yeah, because again, Casey was pressured on 39.4% of his dropbacks last year, which was 11th most in the nation. And I think it's going to go down somewhat, but I still think we're probably going to be a top 30 team in the nation with, pressure off dropbacks.
Most often dropback. Yeah. I mean, that was one thing that both Casey and Jeff were really good at, respectively, last year, was not being the reason for the pressure. Like last year, Jeff Sims was only 122nd in responsibility for pressure. 9.4% of his pressures were he had some responsibility for, whereas Casey Thompson was basically the exact same last year. So both quarterbacks did a good job, but it wasn't their fault they were pressured. It was the offensive lines. And so, that is something to consider this season where, Jeff Sims should have the ability to run the ball, bring it down and find some yardage, whereas Casey didn't have as much ability to do that. So that is one question. But I think the biggest X factor here is that a lot of Husker fans after the performance, including myself, after the spring game, were really optimistic about Jeff Sims' passing ability. But the question is, he hasn't really showed it on the field. At Georgia Tech last year, I mean, basically all of his big plays came on the ground. He had the quick release, and in the intermediate passes and short game, he was decent. But downfield is where he really struggled last year.
Yeah, he was 98th ranked and only 38.5% completion percentage on those downfield throws.
Yeah, 20 plus yards.
Which is very concerning. So, yeah, again, while we think he can do a lot, and again is definitely probably in the top half, and this list obviously is going to change as the season goes. We're going to find out really who this is, but
right.
I think just there is enough concerns there where I think that there is other guys that we feel more confident that are ahead of him.
At the end of the day, like his running alone could keep him as like an efficient enough Big Ten quarterback that it doesn't necessarily matter. But again, at the same time, if his passing hits and he throws at anything like what he did in the spring game, the Husker offense could be pretty exciting and he could really take off. So,
and if our O-line can get their act together.
Right. Well, that's the other factor. If they even give him a chance to throw the ball downfield.
Exactly.
So that'll all be part of the equation, to say the least. So at number 5, Kyle McCord at Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to put Ohio State quarterbacks ranked anywhere, other than the top 4.
Right.
He's played in 12 games. He started one game against Akron. Overall in his career, he's thrown 58 times. He's 41 of 58 for 606 yards, 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Again, he is throwing 2 great names like Marvin Harrison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave. It's pretty easy, I feel like, to throw, again, to look like a good QB when you got those guys to throw to. But I mean, there is a sort of a battle, but it is looking like he's going to be the starter as a junior, a guy who's kind of been in the system. And, when the number has been called, he has been able to compete and win those games when needed in the past. So, I mean,
this is a tough rank, though, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you watch the film, it's like he's looked like he has the potential, but like, who knows? And so you're banking on.
Yeah, it's not like, again, when Josh dropped Trevor Lawrence, like you watched him when he split time the first game and, the year, and you're like, oh my gosh, like he's it.
So
it's
like, I would say it's even more likely that Kyle McCord actually isn't that good. And that would be shocking for Ohio State not to have a great quarterback. And then who knows, then you probably bring in the next guy and then suddenly the dude's a god. And you have a classic Ohio State situation.
when your third string quarterback can win you the college football playoff,
right?
Cardell Jones, you're just you could put Kyle McCord, but you might as well.
The urban era. Who knows?
You might as well just put Ohio State, QB, and you'll feel pretty good. And so, I mean, because Devin Brown is waiting in the wings as a true freshman, and he's probably great.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's the debate here and kind of the bet. And that also goes for number 4 on this list. I mean, this is a guy who people are banking on succeeding based off the track record of others that have came before him. And that is Penn State's quarterback, Drew Allar, a true sophomore, a 5-star recruit, ranked number 1 quarterback in the 2022 class, and the 3rd overall recruit in the class. And we know what that means in the last 5 years for number 1 ranked quarterbacks. It's been a good story, especially for ones that have been in the top 2 or 3 in overall grades for their class. I mean, basically the worst one since 2018 was Spencer Rattler, but he was also the lowest ranked of the number 1 quarterbacks in his class. I think he was ranked 9th overall in that class, whereas guys of course the Trevor Lawrences of the world and all of those guys were ranked number 1, number 2, like Bryce Young and everyone else. So those are the interesting ones. I mean, what are your thoughts on Drew Allar and the potential that he has at Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, with the 6'5" frame and a big arm,
big dude.
Yeah, that's very. It gives you a lot of confidence. He played 148 snaps last year. He had a 66.4 passer rating. Yeah, I mean, I think that he's very talented, and with the whole season and another year, to improve. And when you watch the highlight tape, he is exciting.
You're banking on the history and the historical hit rate of these 5-star quarterbacks. I mean. Yeah. Would I say that he looked like he was going to be a Hall of Famer or something like that? Like a college football Hall of Famer after the snaps that he played? No, but you can see the potential there. And so that's what you're really banking on, is that they're going to find ways to develop him this offseason. And then with a whole year under his belt, you're going to find that thing. So this is kind of a bet that he's going to take that next step up, but it's possible he doesn't. And then suddenly at the end of the day, he could easily fall out, and then you finally, you could find a Jeff Sims or Drew
Jeff
Allar
Sims could
someone
slide up 2 spots if he plays good. Yeah, exactly.
So there is some potential here for some movement in the up into this top 4, top 3. And that's where it gets really interesting. So the top 3 are all really, really fascinating quarterbacks, especially here at number 3 with Tanner Mordeci at Wisconsin, transferring from SMU. I mean, this is interesting.
It's hard to not watch the tape and say, wow.
Oh, gosh. And be scared a little bit.
It's frustrating for sure. He has such a fast release. He has a cannon of an arm.
It scares me.
I mean, at SMU, he broke the record. He threw 7 touchdowns in a single game, against Houston. He's impressive. He's impressive. In PFF, he was the 34th best quarterback last year under pressure. With a 56.8% completion, and he had time back there. So,
and he also had Rashee Rice.
Rashee Rice, dude. Oh man, those highlights. Yeah, Rashee Rice was you could just throw it up to him, and he was just snagging catches. And now he'll be catches, passes from Patrick Mahomes this next year.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, he does look good though.
What a downgrade.
I know.
Go from Mordecai to Mahomes. Embarrassing. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you though. I mean, the potential is so here. And when you pair that with Kamara DK and the weapons that Wisconsin has, and I mean, suddenly this offense looks intimidating when you can run the ball with one of probably the best running back in the Big Ten, and then throw the ball downfield to a great wide receiver with a quarterback that has the downfield ability. I mean, like you said, he was an effective downfield thrower last year.
Yeah.
And I mean, completing
over 3,400 yards in the last 2 seasons and 72 touchdowns.
Yeah, and 43.9% completion percentage downfield of 20 plus yards. That's really, really good. Replacing Graham Mertz, this feels like an upgrade for Wisconsin. It feels like a grand slam, and he played tough competition last year, so there's just not very many red flags for him, and he has a quick release, and there's a lot of good things to like here. So
he dropped 34 points on TCU last year.
It sucks because it's you don't want it to work for Luke Fickell and Wisconsin.
It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
It's
gonna work. Yeah, I know, and they're gonna be really good. It's so frustrating. Yeah. Oh man, it's very frustrating.
And we'll talk more about that in the Big Ten West predictions video, so be on the look for that here in the next few weeks as well. So at number 2, this is where the top 2 is. The top 2 is debatable, and there's a lot of debate here between where these two lie, and most lists have it different. So this is definitely one where we want to see your comments down below and drop your hot takes. But at number 2, we have JJ McCarthy from Michigan.
Ooh, spicy. The Michigan fans are sad.
They're pissed.
Oh, man, I can't believe it. Cade McNamara only at 8 and JJ McCarthy only at 2. You Michigan haters. He was the 50th graded QB on PFF last year. 77.7 rating. It's a great number. I mean, he's good. I was very good. I was almost ready to slide Tanner Mordecai ahead, to be honest.
Whoa.
So, I know.
That is spicy. That's a hot take.
Yeah, that is a hot take. He was 46th rated in downfield passes with a 39.3% completion percentage. And, he's good. He can win games. He's, the upgrade from Cade McNamara, more than just a game manager, can make some of those long throws for you, which is very solid. He's good.
I'm hearing a lot of good things here for someone that you didn't want to rank highly.
I mean, I wanted to put him at 3 instead of 2. So
yeah, embarrassing. But I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, I mean, he's just a really efficient player, and he takes care of the ball. I mean, he only threw 5 picks last year. He had 22 touchdowns, 5 picks. That's where his value comes from as a game manager, is taking care of the ball, making the plays he needs to make, doing exactly what Harbaugh needs him to do, and finding the talented players on Michigan, on that Michigan offense. And all you got to do is dump the ball off to Blake Corum, and you're going to be in a good spot. So it's
not difficult,
not hard to do. And at the end of the day, like, that's exactly what Michigan needed with that great defense to establish, a consistent winning formula. So do I think that JJ McCarthy would dominate on another team? And that's where my question comes, is like, I don't think he'd be that's where I'm at. Yeah, and
exactly.
That's why at number 1 we have Taulia Tagovailoa from Maryland, and that's my exact argument, is because if you swap these two, I think Taulia would be a superstar at Michigan. McCarthy would still be a very solid player at Maryland, and probably be good. He'd be good, but like, I don't think he would be as dominant, as efficient as he was at Michigan, and you would see Taulia elevate to a new level. So Taulia is still fantastic, and you see his versatility, and he really is more of a traditional pocket passer than you might expect for someone who has a significant amount of athleticism, but he really does like to stay in the pocket. And so that's what I think is really fascinating. Last year, he was just a really solid quarterback all around, 40th ranked graded on PFF, and top 15
10 spots higher
throwing.
than JJ McCarthy.
There you go. Obviously PFF grades are not everything,
yes,
but at the end of the day, I do think that there's a lot of context there that allows for Taulia to excel. And that's why, like, when compared, I do prefer Taulia as a talent overall. And I mean, he's broken every record at Maryland when it comes to passing yards, touchdowns, efficiency, everything. So
completion
you got to respect his success,
total offense
at Maryland. And for all of those things, I mean, I would die to have Taulia as our quarterback.
Yeah, same. I mean, he's done great things for Maryland. And again, I think any team in the Big Ten, you'd want to have him on your team. Yeah, the other thing is he does create a little bit more pressure for himself, but
that was a big problem with JJ McCarthy too, though. JJ was had the 3rd most responsibility for pressure in the entire country. 31.6 of the pressures he experienced were of his own doing in some way. So obviously, though, part of that stat is skewed against lesser athletic quarterbacks, because more athletic quarterbacks can give themselves a little bit more time, and they're less responsible for some of the pressure, obviously. So that does come into play. But at the same time, it's very close between both. I don't mind either. But I give Taulia a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there when it comes to the head-to-head comparison. I think it is really interesting, though, because I mean, in the context of college football, this is probably the first time in a while where the Big Ten hasn't had like a top
the CJ Stroud
5 quarterback in the college football, a top 10 quarterback in college football, probably. I mean, Taulia's maybe right there, but it's actually interesting. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it's way more of an even playing field.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because Michigan hasn't been supplying it. I mean, and Purdue last year, I mean, unless Hudson Card is somebody, Purdue with, Aiden O'Connell and some of those other guys that they had, some of those great passers. It does feel like the Big Ten, it is a quote unquote down year. We say that, and then, Penn State's Allar or,
someone will dominate.
Again, it's one of those two guys. I think that's why we had to put them at 4 and 5, is because probably shakes out one of those guys.
The breakout potential is there.
Yeah. And is, exactly, going to be first team all Big Ten. Tanner Mordecai is like a sleeper for me on this year of just Wisconsin just being the difference of having a great year. I mean, I think him and Ed Allen, like that's just a studly combination, and I am extremely jealous.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I agree. I mean, basically to me, the top 7 are all quite interesting, and especially the top 6 when you start with Jeff Sims as you know the flyer who has high upside, but then basically everyone else has massive upside for being an incredible quarterback. So I'm excited to see what the Big Ten has to offer this year, and there's a lot of question marks about who's actually going to end the season as the best quarterback. That's why I want to hear your guys' predictions about who you have as best quarterback in the Big Ten and your biggest sleepers. Drop them down below. We appreciate you guys for watching. And be on the lookout for a channel rebrand that's going to happen here over the next few weeks. So, just know that if the name changes and you're like, the heck's that? It might be us. And so be on the lookout. We'll announce it officially, of course. But just know that that's coming soon. So we appreciate you guys for watching. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports. And we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.